Okay, so when you close your eyes and picture Mongolian, what image springs to mind? For lots of us, I bet it's something straight out of the history books, or maybe those epic movies, like a warrior of the steppe, maybe short, broad-faced, dark-eyed, riding across those huge plains, part of Genghis Khan's armies. That's kind of the common stereotype, isn't
Yeah.
it? Deeply ingrained in it. But what if I told you that that iconic image, as powerful as it is, it only tells part of the story, a much richer, maybe more surprising story? Today, we're going to do a deep dive into a really fascinating question for you. What makes Mongolia's people look so, well, diverse? And by diverse, I mean the incredible, sometimes really unexpected variety within the Mongolian population itself. We're setting off on a journey that might just challenge your assumptions. You could open your eyes to this whole tapestry of human experience woven over thousands of years.
Yeah, and it's such an important journey because this isn't just, listing off different physical features, not at all. It's really about connecting those things we can see, the visible traits, to something much, much bigger, something profound. We'll explore how Mongolia's unique geography, its climate, and then centuries of incredibly dynamic history. I mean, especially those huge migrations and powerful empires, how all that profoundly shaped one of humanity's most resilient populations. So we're going to unpack the deep genetic legacy, look closely at those individual physical traits, and we'll even touch on the modern cultural debates swirling around what it actually means to have a Mongolian look. You should prepare yourself for some surprising facts, definitely things that will reshape how you think about it.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit then.
Yeah.
When many of us think about Mongolia, maybe we instinctively picture it as this remote, kind of isolated place, almost tucked away from the world. But history tells a vastly, vastly different story, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't secluded at all.
More like a superhighway, right?
Yeah.
A real crossroads.
Exactly. A vibrant crucible of civilizations. Think about those ancient empires. The Xiongnu, various Turkic groups, and of course the Mongols themselves. They built these enormous territories stretching, from Europe sometimes all the way to Korea.
Wow.
And every single invasion, every migration, every trade route, it left genetic traces. It wasn't isolated. It was connected. And what's truly fascinating here is how these huge historical movements are, well, quite literally written in the genes of the people today. Our sources consistently show that modern Mongolians primarily descend from ancient East Asian and Siberian lineages. That's like the bedrock.
Oh, okay, the main foundation.
Right. But, and this is but there's a really notable West Eurasian input. This genetic thread comes from groups like the Indo-Iranians, various Turkic tribes, people moving through or settling in the region over millennia. This was happening long before the Mongol Empire even rose to prominence.
So we're not just talking about, like, lines changing on a map.
Not at all.
We're talking about the actual genetic makeup of people evolving through all these interactions. Do we have specific data? Does it give us a sense of this blend?
We do, yeah, and the specifics are pretty illuminating. There were some key genetic studies around 2017, and they give a pretty clear picture. Approximately 80% of Mongolian ancestry is indeed East and Northeast Asian.
Okay, so the majority.
The solid majority, but that remaining 15 to 20%, that reflects significant West Eurasian admixture. And crucially, this West Eurasian influence, it's especially common among certain Western Mongol groups, like the Kazakhs and the Oirats, who historically live in Mongolia's western regions. The real aha moment here is that these numbers aren't just stats, They're like a living genetic blueprint. They show how ancient empires literally reshaped the faces of a nation, challenging any idea we might have had about a pure Mongolian look.
That makes sense.
And this blending directly connects to why you can find Mongolians who look very typically East Asian. But then occasionally you'll see individuals with lighter eyes or maybe lighter hair or even taller builds, traits we might associate more with Central Asians. It's a direct window into their ancestry.
That's truly remarkable, like a visible echo of history right there in their DNA. So, okay, we've established this really rich genetic foundation. What does that actually look like on the ground? Let's maybe peel back the layers and explore these physical characteristics, trait by trait. The visual evidence sounds compelling. Let's start with something basic, like skin tone. You might have a preconceived idea, but, well, prepare for some nuance. Most Mongolians, according to the sources, have light to medium olive complexions. And this isn't just random, right? It's seen as a great adaptation to their northern latitudes, where you get really strong sun seasonally. But even within that, there's variation. You'll find darker tans, for example, more common maybe down in the Gobi Desert regions.
Yeah, simply due to more intense sun exposure there, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And indeed, the variation is actually quite well documented. It just shows how adaptable human populations are. Some surveys suggest about 65% of Mongolians fall into those light olive to fair skin ranges.
Here's the majority.
Then another 25% are kind of in the medium olive category, and maybe 10% or so present with darker tan shades. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this range, while totally natural, has actually sparked some internal debates
Oh, about what?
about what constitutes the, quote, true Mongolian look. Our sources mention that some nationalist groups, for instance, argue that fairer skin is somehow more authentic.
That's interesting, and probably quite sensitive.
Definitely. But conversely, many others within Mongolia strongly celebrate the steppe's full spectrum of tones. They see it as part of Mongolia's rich, diverse identity.
Right. It shows how even physical traits can become tied up in cultural discussions and identity. That's a powerful point. Does this idea of authenticity ever connect back to specific historical narratives? Or is it mostly just about the physical traits in these debates?
It often intertwines, yeah. Some narratives might emphasize, say, periods of perceived purity or maybe isolation from outsiders, while other narratives champion the long history of interaction and mixing as the real story. But the core debate itself often seems to spark from those visible differences, which just underlines how deeply our appearance can connect to our sense of belonging, you know?
Fascinating. Okay, so shifting from ancestry and skin tone,
Yeah.
what about something as distinct as eye color? Is it mostly the dark eyes we might expect from that stereotype, or are there surprises here too?
Well, dark brown eyes definitely dominate. We're talking around 85 to 90% of Mongolians. That's the vast majority.
Okay.
But the surprise factor is really the frequency with which lighter shades pop up. It's not just some super rare anomaly. It's a consistent, though smaller, percentage.
Like what kind of numbers?
The data we have suggests about 5 to 7% of Mongolians have hazel or amber eyes.
Oh, okay.
And a notable 2 to 3% actually show blue or green eyes.
Really? Blue or green?
Yes, and these lighter eye colors are particularly more common in those Western regions we mentioned earlier, precisely where Turkic and Indo-European ancestries mixed with Mongol groups historically. It maps quite well.
That's truly striking. So are we talking about just a subtle hint of lightness, or are these eye colors genuinely noticeable if you were, say, walking around?
Oh, they're genuinely noticeable. And while the epicanthic fold, the one that creates that characteristic almond eye shape is common, its prominence isn't actually uniform across the board. Northern Mongols, like the Buryats near the Russian border, for example, they often show stronger folds, maybe narrower eye openings, whereas Kazakh and Oirat groups, especially in the West, they sometimes have larger eyes and, more frequently lighter colored eyes, too.
Okay.
There's even this striking detail from older historical accounts. Travelers who apparently marveled at Mongolians they met who had gray or green eyes. They recorded them as unusual, sure, but definitely not unheard of, not rare.
Huh.
It just shows that even what we think of as a classic feature has its own spectrum. It's never quite as simple as we might assume. These traits are very much part of the nation's sort of quiet diversity.
So, from the color of their eyes, let's move up. What about their hair? Does that also tell a story of this blend and adaptation?
It absolutely does. Now, about 75% of Mongolians do have that thick, straight black hair, often associated with the Idar gene variant, which is pretty common across East Asia.
Right, the expected type.
The most common type, yes. But we also see significant variations. About 15% show wavy textures.
Wavy hair.
Yeah, and this seems especially noticeable again in some of those Western groups. And what's maybe even more striking, roughly 10% of the population has naturally lighter brown or chestnut shades of hair.
Brown hair.
Okay. And in some rare cases, particularly among Kazakhs and Oirats again, you can even find individuals with auburn or even blonde hair.
Wow, blonde hair. That definitely breaks the stereotype.
It really does. And researchers explain this by reminding us that these steppe populations historically carried both East Asian and West Eurasian traits. It wasn't one or the other. This continuous mixing over centuries is precisely why these lighter hair shades occasionally appear, challenging that single image we might hold.
Okay, so if hair and eye color show this much variety, what about the actual architecture of the face, the bone structure? Can the shape of a Mongolian face tell us a story about their environment and ancestry too?
It certainly can, yeah. When you look at the distinct features of, say, Khalkha Mongols or the majority group, you typically see those broad faces, the characteristic almond eyes we mentioned, maybe flatter nasal bridges, and very strong, prominent cheekbones.
Right.
These are traits anthropologists believe adapted really well to the often harsh steppe environment, probably offering protection from cold winds, intense sun, that sort of thing.
And how do these features compare to other groups within Mongolia? Do we see big differences there?
That's where the comparison gets so illustrative. If you contrast the Khalkha features with Western Mongols like the Oirots and Cossacks, they often present with somewhat narrower noses. They tend to have taller builds on average. And as we've already discussed, it's just more common to find lighter eyes and hair among them.
Okay.
Then if you look north at groups like the Buryats, they often have perhaps larger faces overall, still high cheekbones, but maybe slightly lighter olive skin tones. And conversely, if you go south towards Inner Mongolia and the Chinese border, those groups tend to exhibit more typically East Asian features, straighter black hair, maybe lighter skin. What's really compelling here is the hard data. Anthropological surveys have actually measured these differences, and they show up to a 14% variation in what they call craniofacial ratios, basically, the proportional measurements of their faces across different Mongolian subgroups.
14% variation. That's significant.
It is. That's concrete evidence of really significant mixing and adaptation happening across the vastness of Eurasia, reflected right there in facial structure.
That's a powerful visual. Diversity etched right into their bone structure. Okay, and finally, let's talk about height and build. Mongolia is often noted for having quite tall, broad-shouldered builds, especially when you compare them to some neighboring East Asian populations. Is this another reflection of their unique history and environment?
It truly seems to be. Our sources give some fascinating specifics here. The average male height in Mongolia today is around 172 centimeters. That's about 5'8".
Okay.
And for females, it's about 160 centimeters, roughly 5'3". But even within those averages, you see clear regional differences again. For example, Western Kazakh men tend to be taller, averaging maybe 174 to 175 centimeters,
Taller.
while Khalkha Mongols generally fall closer to the national average. And here's a really remarkable fact from a 2020 health study. It revealed that Mongolian men have gained nearly 9 centimeters in average height just since the 1950s.
Wow. 9 centimeters. It's over 3 inches.
In just a few generations.
Exactly. It's one of the fastest increases recorded anywhere in Asia.
And they know why.
Yes, it's directly tied to improvements in nutrition, specifically a diet historically rich in dairy and meat on the steppe.
That's a profound demonstration of environmental impact, isn't it? It really makes you rethink how quickly human traits can respond.
It absolutely does. It just powerfully demonstrates the impact of nutrition and environment on physical traits over a relatively short historical period. So, yeah, their height and build are absolutely part of that larger story of adaptation, environment, and that ancestral blend.
So, okay, all these fascinating variations. And it leads us right back to the core question, doesn't it? Is there really such a thing as a typical Mongolian look? We all carry that historical stereotype, often reinforced by all those history books talking about Genghis Khan's armies. But what does the reality on the ground with all this genetic and physical diversity we've just discussed actually tell us? Yeah, and this is where identity within Mongolia itself becomes really interesting and sometimes contested. Our sources highlight that some people within the country might claim that, say, the Kazakh minority, with their often lighter features, that they are somehow less authentic Mongolians.
I can see how that might happen.
But importantly, others strongly counter this. They point to the centuries-long presence of these groups as undeniable proof of their belonging. They see them as an integral part of the nation's fabric, It's a very real internal debate reflecting deep historical currents and ideas about identity.
And then you layer globalization on top of all of this historical complexity.
Yeah.
That must just add another layer, right? Creating even more variations, especially maybe in the cities.
Exactly. Urban Mongolians, particularly in Ulaanbaatar, are increasingly intermarrying with people from surrounding countries, Chinese, Russians, Koreans, others. And, as you'd expect, this naturally produces an even greater diversity of looks and features within the population today.
Which leads to?
Well, it creates this fascinating tension. On one side, you have some nationalists who sometimes voice concerns. They worry that this increasing diversity might somehow dilute what they perceive as the traditional or authentic Mongolian look.
Okay.
But on the other side, you see younger generations often actively embracing this growing variation. Many see it as a natural and positive part of a modern, evolving Mongolian identity. one that reflects a dynamic, outward-looking nation in the 21st century.
So for you, our listener, who might still be picturing just that one type of Mongolian, how can we really internalize this incredible journey, both ancestrally and visually?
Okay, well, imagine this. You're walking through Ulaanbaatar's big, bustling Marantual market. It's just this explosion of senses, sights, sounds. You'd probably see a Khalkha woman, maybe with those classic broad cheekbones and almond eyes, expertly selling her dairy products.
Right.
Nearby, you might spot a Kazakh merchant, perhaps with striking hazel eyes and maybe lighter skin, skillfully bargaining over a stack of colorful rugs. And just a few stalls down, maybe a young Buryat man with rich chestnut brown hair is carrying heavy baskets of goods. The whole crowd just hums with difference, yet every single face in that diverse marketplace belongs undeniably to Mongolia. It's a powerful, living, visual representation of everything we've been talking about.
That's such a perfect illustration. It brings it alive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just facts and figures. It's a living, breathing testament to history.
Precisely. And for Mongolians themselves, appearance is often deeply tied to heritage, to their history of survival on the vast, sometimes harsh steppe. Traits like broad cheekbones and strong builds, they aren't just features. They're often celebrated as ideal, practical adaptations for that environment.
A source of pride.
Definitely. And families with those rarer, lighter eyes or hair, they often highlight these as special distinguishing traits, a kind of visible link to a specific part of their complex ancestry. Now, it would be incomplete not to acknowledge that prejudice does still exist sometimes. Our sources are clear that minorities can occasionally feel excluded from what some define as the main Mongolian narrative based on appearance.
Right, that tension is real.
It is. But the powerful pivot here, especially recently, is that younger Mongolians seem to be actively redefining what beauty means in their context. They're using platforms like social media campaigns specifically to celebrate the full spectrum of Mongolian looks, from those classic Khalkha features all the way to the striking light eyes sometimes seen among Kazakhs. It's a powerful reclaiming of pride in all the diverse faces that make up modern Mongolia.
So what we've really uncovered in this deep dive is that, well, scientists and historians seem to agree. There is no single monolithic Mongolian look. It just doesn't exist. Instead, Mongolia embodies this incredible story of Eurasia. You've got East Asian, Turkic, Siberian, and West Eurasian threads, all beautifully and intricately woven together over millennia. The diversity might not slap you in the face at first glance, especially if you're holding on to those old stereotypes, but it is profoundly there. It's in the occasional green eyes of a Western Mongol, maybe the wavy hair of a Buryat. It's in the taller frames of Kazakhs, and yes, also in the broad cheekbones of Khalkha herders. It's all part of the picture.
Which brings us back, doesn't it? So what truly makes Mongolia's people look so diverse? The answer really seems to lie in that convergence of empire and environment. The land of Genghis Khan wasn't just a place of conquest. It was a crossroads. It drew together East and West, not just militarily, but culturally, genetically, for centuries. And this incredible history produced a population that carries both, ancient continuity in some features, but also this surprising, vibrant diversity in others.
So when you, our listener, see a Mongolian with classic dark eyes and black hair, and then perhaps another with lighter hazel eyes, and maybe another with chestnut hair and a notably tall stature, you are not seeing contradictions. You're not seeing something inauthentic. You're seeing Mongolia's long and complex history written right there in human faces, a living, breathing testament to its past.
And maybe the lesson for all of us is this. Identity is not uniform. It's rarely simple, and it's certainly not static. Mongolia's true beauty, perhaps its profound strength, lies precisely in its variation. It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that diversity isn't a weakness, but maybe the inherent strength of a nation shaped by the vast, challenging, and ultimately connecting open steppe.